Welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. Today I want to talk about one of my all-time favorite baits, the Lipless Crankbait. This is the Berkeley War Pig, just an outstanding lipless crankbait. And really, this is a bait that we continue to find new ways to fish it. You know, when the lipless crankbait first came out, it was considered one of the best grass baits that you could throw. Cast it over a grass flat, rip it through the tops, and you just create a lot of reaction strikes. But I'm here to tell you that I think a lot of people are missing the boat in terms of not fishing these in enough locations. Most people recognize a lipless crankbait as a grass fishing bait, but it really is not. It is one of the best all around multi purpose fishing lures that we have. You can throw it in so many different places. So I want to share with you a bunch of unusual places to throw it that I have a pile of success. In fact, I almost choose to throw this more so in these other locations than I do when I'm fishing a big grass flat. I would rather throw something like a vibrating jig on a grass flat, which is more weedless than an exposed trebled hook lipless crankbait like this war pig. But the reality is, whether you still like to throw them in grass or not, there are a lot of other locations to try. So that's what I want to give you today. I want to give you some background as to where I like to throw them and how I like to throw them. Before I get into that, I do want to remind you guys, if you're looking for some additional content from me, please check out my members only page. I do additional monthly videos as well as monthly live streams that you can go check out if you're a member. The video or the information for that can be found on my YouTube homepage. Also, if you want to support the channel, please use my Tackle Warehouse affiliate link when making tackle purchases. The little bit that comes back from that goes right back into making content to hopefully help all of the viewers catch a few extra fish. All right, so we're going to talk about the lipless crankbait today, just like this guy right here. I want to point out a couple of things that I think anglers don't use them enough for. Not necessarily a location, but I think most people consider this to be a shallow running bait, meaning if you're fishing 6 foot of water or less, the reality is you can fish this bait effectively down to like 20 feet of water. You can fish suspended fish that are suspended over 100, but you can get these down pretty deep. They really do sink well, they stay down well, and they're just a simple bait to fish deeper. So I think a lot of people right off the bat are not fishing it deep enough. The other aspect that I want to add to it is this bait shines when you make contact with something. It's meant to deflect off objects. So whether that's being ripped through grass, deflecting off stumps, deflecting off rocks, you want to hit targets with it. I think a lot of people are afraid because it's got treble hooks to make contact. But the reality is, the way this bait's set up, it runs into an object and deflects off of it. It does not get hung up all that much. It's a fairly weedless bait for having exposed treble hooks. So once you get those two ideas down, meaning you want to hit more objects and you can fish them a lot deeper than most people think, it opens up a lot of new places to fish these. So some of my absolute favorites are fishing deep water ledges. I love throwing a lipless on TVA lake ledges. So generally you're going to be talking about, I'm going to say 12 to 20 foot of water. I throw it out, let it sink to the bottom, and then I start yo-yoing it back. I yo-yo it, let it fall to the bottom, yo-yo it, and that snap off the bottom, that yo-yo, is what creates a lot of reaction strikes. So if you've got a school of fish that are not willing to bite, you might want to try yo-yoing a lipless crankbait through them, because that can generate some really good reaction strikes for you. So right off the bat, that's a deep water location that I love to fish them. One of my absolute favorite places to fish them is in shallow water rivers that have heavy current. So I'm talking areas that are almost like rapids, raging white water. These baits run extremely well in very fast water. They create a lot of noise. They let the fish know that the bait is coming. So if you've got fast moving water and your bait is deflecting off things, just rattling up a storm, that fish has a little bit longer time to prepare for that bait to come, meaning they hear it coming. And in that fast moving water, which generally they don't have much time to prep for a bait coming by. The more leeway you can give them to prepare for your bait, the better, which is one thing I love about lipless crankbaits. It's a great fast moving water bait. Next up would be schooling fish. You know, the great thing about lipless baits is you can cast these out and cover a pile of water. And a lot of people don't think about a lipless as a schooling fish bait, but because you can make really long casts and just chunk and wind really fast, if you're looking for schooling fish, it's a great bait to do it. So sometimes you're fishing over 100 feet of water, but the reality is those fish are feeding near the surface. They're pushing bait up to the surface to help corner the bait fish, and therefore a lot of times the key to catching schooling fish is a bait you can make a long cast with and a bait that you can work through the schools quickly and retrieve back to the boat quickly. And again, the lipless crankbait fits all of those categories. I mean, it's a great schooling fish bait. The last thing I want to say with respect to it is I don't think people use lipless crankbaits enough around rocks. So whether you've got shallow rock flats or maybe a riprap dike wall or a long road with a bunch of riprap on it, uh, this can be a great bait as a substitute to a traditional crankbait. Again, like I said, it deflects really well. It creates better reaction strikes, in my opinion, than a lot of crankbaits. And because of that, it really excels around rock. Now, I know a lot of people probably still throw it by rock, but I'm talking about fishing it down, for miles down a causeway or fishing it on big, shallow rock flats where you're just trying to cover a bunch of water because you know there's some fish that are on them. That's a great thing to do in the spring months when you get these shallow rock flats that warm up faster. And a lot of people want to only throw a crankbait on them. But the thing that's nice about your lipless is it doesn't necessarily just want to dive. You can keep them up in the water column a lot better. And a lot of these shallow rock flats are in 4 foot of water or less with some isolated big boulders or stumps mixed in. And you get hung up quite a bit more with a traditional crankbait because it's always wanting to dive into the cracks versus a lipless, which kind of just comes across the top of the rocks. So it's something to keep in mind. I would add in there that a stump flat is every bit as good. Again, a lot of people don't want to throw a lipless crankbait. They would much rather throw a square bill crankbait through a stump flat. But the reality is you can get much better deflection off those stumps with a lipless bait and generate more strikes because of it. Plus, the fish are much more accustomed to seeing square bills in those areas, whether they're rock flats or along riprap banks or on stump flats. And they don't get to see a lipless, which has a different motion and a different deflection motion when it comes through those areas. So you're giving the fish a different presentation. But I don't want you guys to think that a lipless is only a grass fishing bait. It truly is an extremely good multi-purpose tool that we have that can be fished almost anywhere effectively. And that's one of the reasons why I love them. It's a great bait to use. And I think most people throw them, but they don't throw them enough. So I would say this spring, as soon as the water temp starts rising back up again after the winter months, you're looking at a lipless being one of the best baits that you can throw. So if you haven't been using one much in the early part of the year, you definitely want to tie one on and give it a try. Hopefully this video was helpful. If it was, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and stay tuned. We'll have a new video coming out tomorrow for you.